What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and I haven't done this segment in a little while, so for those of you who aren't very familiar with it, this is kind of more unscripted, more off the cuff, just my kind of general opinions on things. Fewer edits, maybe handheld sometimes too when I'm away. Just basically a place for me to drop my thoughts when they just sort of come to me and I just want to vomit it all out. And also more on the kind of negative side, as the title would sort of imply here. And today I want to talk about the new album from Suicide Silence. Now, I want to preface this in saying I am a Suicide Silence fan, especially the Mitch era albums. I have them all, so don't call me out and just say, oh, you don't like Deathcore, you don't appreciate it, whatever. That's just absolutely not true. I've appreciated what these guys have put out, and I'm always interested to kind of see where the next album goes. But that out of the way, let me just say that this new Suicide Silence album, in my opinion, is
not good.
And I say that somewhat facetiously because I don't think it's a bad album either. Like, it's not terrible. It's just fine. And that's kind of the problem with it. And this seems to be kind of the shared opinion of a lot of people I've been watching and talking to, is it's passable. Like, it's a very just sort of middle of the road, by the numbers, deathcore album. And I think the best way I've heard it described is actually Brad from Banger kind of described it as an overcorrection from their previous album.
Suicide Silence overcommitted to what they wanted to do and then overcorrected. They ditched the deathcore way too hard on their last one, but then on this one, I think that they went way too far back, which almost makes it feel like they're feeling guilty.
And I think that's so true. And I can kind of like feel for the band and probably their frustration at this point, because honestly, it's like that last album, the self-titled one, it's like, hey, we're going to try something new. We're going to experiment with something. And they're probably like excited about it. And then they put it out there and everybody fucking hates it. Like, it's just, people are across the board just slammed that album and made memes about it. And it was just, it's a joke at this point. And now it's like they switched over and they're like, okay, well, the fans hated that, so we're just going to go back and kind of do what we were doing. So they do that, and everybody fucking hates that now too. And it's just like, shit, well, we can't win. And so again, like, I think as a band, I would be really frustrated to be in that realm. And so here's where my really kind of unpopular opinion comes in, because a lot of people are like, let's find a middle ground here. Like, they need to kind of like figure out how do they take this idea and kind of meld them together. Honestly, me personally, I was one of the few people, I think, who was sort of an apologist for the last album, because even though it wasn't great and it had a lot of problems and it was extremely messy, I just really appreciated that they were doing something different. And I think they need to, because to be honest, like, this just, it doesn't fly anymore. Like, it was great back then when it came out because there weren't as many bands already doing it. I feel like deathcore as a genre has progressed just so far beyond that, and the competition is fierce now, and the expectations are so much higher. You got much heavier bands doing kind of slammy things like Within Destruction, and then you've got much more technical bands like Infant Annihilator, Shadow of Intent. You've got the more kind of orchestral and symphonic side of things, and so the bar has been raised so far. And this album, it's like the bar is up here and it used to be down here, so they like kind of shot for this, and now it's just sort of whatever. And in a way, I think that's actually going to bode worse for this album. I think people will actually remember the previous album because of all the famously like bad press around it. Whereas this album, I think people are just going to kind of nothing it, and it's just sort of going to disappear. I couldn't even tell you really anything about the album despite having listened to it. Like, it's just that kind of run in the mill for me. So honestly, I feel like the smart thing to do for the band is really, I was kind of hoping they'd double down on what they did last time and be like, fuck everyone, we're just going to keep messing around until we figure out how to make this thing work. And that's just my thought. Like, I think that's the road to survival here, because if they just kind of keep going for middle of the road and fan expectations, I don't know if they're going to get there. Maybe they can. I don't know. But so far, like, I just haven't been impressed with that. Even the first album without Mitch, that kind of was a natural progression, it wasn't all that impressive even then. Like, that album had a few tracks on it that I liked, but ultimately it's just kind of, that one's kind of dull too. It's probably a little better than this one, but Yeah, I just can't put my stamp of approval on this one, but I feel for the band. I'm a fan. I really hope that they can kind of rally and figure out what it is they want to do. Or maybe they're just really happy with this album and they're just kind of like, whatever, this is what we wanted to do. We're happy with what we put out. And hats off to them if that's the case too, because artistic integrity is really everything. And yeah, props for that. And just like random aside, kind of related to this too, that new Lamb of God single, I have very similar feelings about that as well. I am a longtime Lamb of God fan, as some of you probably well know by now. I've got a tier list coming out in the near future, and I have talked about them in an episode of bands that changed my life. I believe I'm losing track of those now. I have every single one of their albums on my shelf, even going back to the Burn the Priest stuff, and I love those guys. But the new single, kind of same thing. Very middle of the road, very just sort of generic, doesn't particularly go anywhere, and it's fine. It's not bad. It's just bland. It's blah. It's meh. It's whatever. So I'm hoping that that album ends up being better because I actually did like Sturm and Drang and also Resolution. Like I've kind of appreciated most of their albums, even from the later category, even though they can't obviously hold a candle to the likes of As the Palaces Burn and Ashes of the Wake. But hey, you can't have everything. So yeah, that's just it. Those are my general thoughts on this. And yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. Also, of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hop down the description. You can find all sorts of great links there of different ways to follow us and also where to support us on Patreon. But that's it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.